Hey guys, thank you for joining us tonight. We are joined by Valentina Loca. Hello, how are you?
What's going on, guys? What's poppin'? Happy to be here, joining the party. I'm finally part of the Cool Kids Club, so that's exciting.
The Cool Kids Club. Yeah, well, to be fair, we have spoken to a few Black and Brave people. I think you might be the 8th graduate we've spoken to from Black and Brave.
Oh, see, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's always a delight speaking to people from Black and Brave because they've always got such positive stories to tell. And it's great seeing how well people have done after Black and Brave as well, because let's face it, it's one of the best schools in North America to train at.
For sure. And yeah, I definitely peeped your guys' playlist when you guys had hit me up to do the interview, and I was like, oh, I know all of these people, and all these people are cool. So if they're cool with this, these guys must be cool. So I'm down. Yeah, for sure.
I feel humbled now. I'm blushing. You know, I'm almost 37. I don't get called cool anymore. So you've made my.
Hey man, that's how it's got to be sometimes. It's kind of like if you're cool with my friends, you're cool with me. So we're already fam. I'm already about it.
I'm sold. I'm there. That's it. We're best friends now. That's it. We're done.
Yep. All right. End it there. All right. Cool.
Joining us. Obviously, as you know, we love the Black and Brave Academy. We love speaking to all you guys. Getting into wrestling. I mean, you're from Iowa. Is that correct?
Actually, I'm from New Mexico. So if you guys have ever watched Breaking Bad, the city where that takes place, that's actually where I'm from. So really? I moved from there. Yeah. So I moved from there to come train at Iowa. Kind of just left my whole family behind. Didn't really know anybody here, and I was like, well, guess I'm gonna go do this wrestling thing in the middle of the Midwest. Never been outside of New Mexico a day in my life, and here we are. I'd like to think it's worked out okay.
How different has Iowa been to New Mexico then?
Oh, it was a completely different night and day, because where I come from, it was a really small town. It was a town of 200 people, maybe on a good day. So to come to Davenport, which is about 100,000 people, it was a whole new world, a whole new adventure. I was like, man, getting the grocery store 10 minutes away from my house, it's mind blowing. I was just.
So what was the experience like? Then obviously. You go to Black and Brave, you've got, Marek and Seth. What was the experience like? I mean, learning from those guys.
It was honestly the most humbling and most appreciative experience I've probably ever had in my life, because coming from New Mexico, I also didn't come from an athletic background at all. Not even played sports a day in my life. I blew Seth's mind the day he asked me, because we were throwing punches, and he was like, hey, it's throwing a baseball, You've thrown a baseball, right? And I was like, well, no. And he was like, what? You've never even thrown a baseball in your whole life? So, I can only imagine what was going through their minds, having to put up with me, who was clumsy and uncoordinated and didn't know where to put my hands and things like that. So just the fact that they opened their arms to me and they welcomed me and they invested their time into me to kind of mold me into a half-decent performer, I couldn't honestly thank them enough, and it was honestly the most awesome experience, so can't speak highly.
I think you should give yourself a lot of credit then. If you're not coming from an athletic background, I know you feel I'm not an athlete. I can't stand up without almost falling over, so I'm clumsy as anything. Yep. So I can only imagine what it's like, going into wrestling training at Black and Brave. You've already got a bit of pressure on you because it's, like we said, one of the best schools. You must have taken to it quite naturally, though, to not have an athletic background, and then not only graduate, but for the last nearly 5 years, I believe, you've been wrestling for some pretty great promotions.
Yeah, honestly, like I said, nothing was guaranteed for me. I kind of came into it not really knowing a whole lot about what it would take to pursue this whole wrestling thing, but I knew that I had the passion for it, and I knew that if I wanted to do it at the highest level. So I like to consider myself kind of an all or nothing kind of person. So I figured, all right, if I've never done sports a day in my life and I'm going to try this wrestling thing, who better to get it done by the top guy at the time to get that done from. So just the fact that I've been able to do so many cool things in wrestling and get to have these opportunities that I have, it's still just mind blowing to me and humbling in the best way, because I've actually only been doing it for a little, I want to say over 3 years, because actually when I graduated from the school, I had graduated with an injury. So I had messed up my ankle pretty bad, so I didn't get to start wrestling at the same time as my other classmates. I had to be in a boot for about 2 months, so that was a good time. But like I said, like just the experiences I've gotten to have in that amount of time is just the most awesome thing. So
who else was in your class then? Who did you come up with?
Oh gosh, I'd like to think, not to like humble brag or anything, but I'd like to think my class was the best class because we had people like Steve Manders, who's like making big names for himself, Dion Roosman, who's doing great things in WrestlePro. I've had people like trying to think if you guys have interviewed him or not. Robin Steele, who's also done things with Dion around the independent circle. Yeah. So like guys like that. And so I also think there's like a bit of pressure because like all these guys in my class were super athletic and like super studs. And like for Steve Manders, for example, he came from the University of Iowa. He was like a big athletic stud. And I'm like, and I like wrestling. So.
One of the things as well, when we've spoken to the people from Black and Brave, is they also tell us about the life lessons that have been instilled at you guys by Seth and Marek. Is that the same with you? They're sort of giving you life lessons as well as wrestling?
Oh, absolutely. Like what I like about Black and Brave, on top of just like being trained in the way that we had, is like they not only like to create good wrestlers, but I think they like to develop good people as well. So like when I get to interact with like all the people that come out of our school, whether they be in my class, prior classes, or even classes after me, like we're all just instilled with like the same value and the same work ethic because we know that we have the expectations that obviously our trainers have placed on us. But what I like is that they don't allow us to settle for less either. So like not only are we expected to live up to their expectations, but to have high expectations of our own, which I think is super important. So like whenever one of us kind of messes up or doesn't really do our best, we can be like, hey, it's cool. Just like do better, be better. And it's very encouraging and a very like welcoming atmosphere. So it's less of like competition between us two, be like, oh, I want to be better than this person, but more like, hey, let's be better together and let's bring each other up. So that's like honestly one of the best parts as well.
Yeah, well, one thing we've always realized is how it's quite it's like a family community at Black and Brave. Everyone's in it together, everyone's helping each other, and at the top of it you've got Seth Rollins, obviously has a wealth of experience, but Marek Brave as a head coach, I mean, even he has a wealth of knowledge. We got to speak to Marek, and he blew my mind with how knowledgeable he is. What did you take away from Marek as well, specifically?
Man, people sleep on Marek. He's great. Like I tell people, because even though he's a little lesser of the known of the two trainers, I always tell people like he's great. He knows exactly what he's doing, and I absolutely believe that like in another life, without like the injury that I'm sure he talked to you guys about, like he would have definitely made it to like a big stage. So I absolutely agree that he's fantastic in terms of wrestling. His mind, his psychology, the stuff that he's imparted on me has been really awesome. I guess like a thing, like not so much a life lesson, but this is something he really did for me in class that was really cool. I came from like a family that also didn't have a lot of money when I came to training. So the shoes that I was using to train, he noticed they were falling apart. Like they were getting holes in the bottom. They were kind of dingy looking. I couldn't tell you how many years I had them for. So one day when I came into class, he just dropped a brand new pair of shoes in front of me, and he was like, here, these are for you. And I was like, oh my God. It was like the nicest thing that anybody had ever done for me, like up to that point. And just the fact that he did that unsolicited, and he did that just because he had noticed these things, and he was like, well, if I'm going to develop you into somebody, you got to have good shoes. So I was just mind blown by like the generosity, and just because at the end of the day, like he's just there to train me to wrestle. Like you would think on paper, like that's just ideally his position. But the fact that he went above and beyond to just help me succeed in that aspect, whether it just be shoes or wrestling, like just the notion and the impact, it meant a whole lot to me.
That's a real head coach or mentor. That's what somebody who really has the best intentions for the students would do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was funny because he tried to play it off. Because I remember receiving an email from him later in the week, and he was like, hey, me and this other assistant trainer that we have by the name of Crotch, he was like, yeah, we're having a bet to see how like little your feet are. And I was like, that's weird, but okay. So I was like, well, here's my shoe size, I guess settle the debate. And little did I know he was just trying to buy me some shoes. So what a guy.
Sneaky.
Yeah.
So, obviously, I mean, like you said, you've graduated, you're wrestling around the country now, but do you still get to stay in touch with Marek and Seth? Like, they're there for advice still if you need it?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, they can't get rid of me because I actually live in a house 5 minutes from the gym. So I'm there every single day bothering them. I tell them you have to pay to get rid of me at this point. So I've been living here ever since I graduated. Thankfully, I've been able to live in a house that's not too far from the school and also allows me to continue, living my dream and continue learning as well because I'll be honest with you guys. I'm gonna level with you. When I graduated, I was still just terribly unathletic, still just not great. So I kind of took the notion to be like, hey, even though I've graduated and I'd like to think that's an accomplishment in itself, like, again, I still didn't settle. I was like, I could go out and move back to New Mexico and try this wrestling thing, or I could continue to stay here and continue to learn. So that's what I've done. I've been here since I graduated in 2017 and still learning, still coming to class as often as I can and helping the future classes too. So I think that's been a really awesome opportunity in itself.
Well, that's it. I mean, we've spoken to a few people and they've always said the same thing. You never stop learning.
Mm-hmm.
And you're proving that. I mean, you want to continue to learn. It's something you're always going to do, and that's an admirable thing. I really respect that. But moving on a bit as well. Obviously, we spoke to JT Energy last week, and we spoke a bit about SCW, which is Iowa's own promotion. You've competed there. What was that like? Obviously, getting to compete in Iowa for SCW.
Oh man, SCW has a special place in my heart because that was like the first place that I really started to get booked and the place that I really started to get my footing. And I'd like to think it was like a good learning ground too. Like, even though I did hold myself to a high standard, there were times when I felt like I didn't do my best or I felt like I could have been better. So I think that was like a place where I could really learn and develop who I was as a character as well, because that crowd is just so awesome and so welcoming, and like the people there, they're like mom and pops. They bring their kids. They're just there to be entertained. So the fact that I was able to go out, mess up sometimes, but still like learn from it and grow and be better, I think like I couldn't really thank the opportunities that I had there enough. And then it's funny that you bring JT Energy in there because my first year in wrestling, I actually got to feud with him and his tag partner. And me and another girl from Missouri, we had a tag team and we got to beef with them, and we had a cute little feud where we fought over the tag titles, and I got to win the tag titles with her a time. So that was a really awesome opportunity. So JT Energy was definitely like a person pivotal to like my development as a wrestler as well. We still had beef, but at the end of the day, it was all love because I got to grow and he got to grow, and it was a great time.
It seems like SCW is one of those companies that has a close relationship with Black and Brave, where people, when they graduate, oftentimes they'll go to SCW to like refine the craft a little bit. Is that the case with quite a lot of people then from Black and Brave?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because Marek himself, I'd like to think, has a pretty good hand in like what goes on in SCW Pro. So I'd like to think that it's a very good place for people from Black and Brave to develop and to kind of get their own voice and to even throw things at the wall and see that sticks. Because Marek, as we talked about, has like a super creative mind. So if you have an idea for something, he's super open to it. So you can be like, hey, I have this idea for this thing. Do you think that it would work? And then, of course, he has performed in a multitude of different audiences, different settings. So he can give you like to it straight. He can be like, I don't know about that, but let's see if it works. Or, okay, I like that. We can see where it goes from here. So it's just affording you the opportunity to at least try. Even if it doesn't work out, like the fact that you can at least try and go out there. And even though we don't have like crowds right now because, with the state of the world and the craziness and things that are happening, we are still able to perform and put matches on Patreon, which is really great. So like the fact that we can still perform and still try things out even without a crowd, I think is an awesome opportunity that I'm grateful for sure.
How are you finding that as well? Obviously, having no crowds, no fans. I mean, how are you finding that as a performer?
Oh, it's so different. It's so interesting because for the longest time, I really considered myself to be like a very crowd-centric person, whether people were loving me or people were hating me. That was something that I thrived off of because for like the first 2 years, I really didn't consider myself overtly confident in my own self. So the fact that I could feed off the crowd and kind of use their energy for like my own adrenaline or my own purpose, it was a curveball at first. I was like, this is so weird. I'm just kind of yelling into space and yelling at a camera. But now that I've actually gotten to do it a few times, I'm a little bit more comfortable with it, which is good because I think that it's just another skill that I'm able to have and to, be available for all situations. So for sure.
Yeah, I guess it's like you said, you get to, with the fans, it's almost, if you're doing something wrong or right because they're going to tell you. Obviously, no fans there, I guess, on the one side, you're getting to hone your craft more. You're getting to concentrate, I guess, on more the in-ring side of things. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. Because with the crowd, you'll hear if they like something or you'll hear if they don't. So when you're kind of throwing things at a wall and hoping that they work without a crowd, it's just kind of just that, just hoping. And so we put it out on Patreon and people are allowed to comment on it and give their feedback in that way. But I think it's more of just like, fingers crossed, I'm going to try this new thing today and hope that people like it. But it's definitely like requiring its own degree of skill and its own degree of kind of navigating the atmosphere, because when you do work in front of a crowd, you can kind of switch things on the fly and see like, well, maybe I'll try this today. But at least when you're working without a crowd, it kind of allows you to hopefully, things will work out. And I think for me, at least, it's worked out a little bit better than, trying things and maybe people don't like it, than, trying things in front of no crowd and expecting the feedback at a later time, if that makes sense.
Do you feel like it's going to be weird when you do have fans back, and you've got like full houses? Is it going to seem like a surreal experience to have that full instant feedback again from the crowd?
Honestly, I think, hoping and considering that the people will be just as happy to see me as I am to see them, because like I said, I feed off of their energy. So like, when I would work as a babyface, I had this song that was like super high energy and super, lit. And so it would have like this build and build and build. And then finally, when I would get out of the curtain, people would be like, ah, and then I would be like, ah. So yeah. I think when that time finally comes, I'll be just as happy to welcome them back as hopefully they're happy to see me as well.
That was a great impression, by the way, of your entrance. I was hyped.
I try. Because actually, funny story about that. The first time that I had worked for Shimmer's sister promotion called Rise, they had actually afforded me the opportunity to have like my first time in front of an audience ever. Like I had never done anything. I had just graduated, just got out of the boot, and I was like losing my mind because I had never done anything and I wasn't really prepared to receive an opportunity. Grateful for it, of course, but when I came to the back and had my first match, as all first matches are, not the best, but one of the agents there was like, hey, you have a great song. And I was like, thanks. So that's something.
Does it make a difference having, as a babyface, how important is it to have your entrance on point? Like you said, you've got a lit entrance theme. Has that made a big difference then to how people perceive you as a babyface?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, like, honestly, I like to, what's the word? English.
Project?
Protrude, project. Yes, I like to give off that energy before you even see me wrestle, because my moniker is the Southwest Spitfire. So as soon as I get out of the curtain, as soon as that beat drops and I'm here and I'm in front of you, I want you to know exactly what you're getting as soon as you see me from the get-go. So if I come out with a lot of energy, I'm here to party, I'm here to have a good time, but I'm also here to, beat some ass.
So what do you do differently? Like, when you're a heel and you're healing it up and you've got to come out and do the exact opposite, what do you change up to make sure people hate you instead of like you?
Oh, it's such a good time, because honestly, especially like in SCW for my first 2 years, I had worked only as a babyface. I'd never worked as a heel. So when Marek approached me with the idea of like, hey, we're going to turn you as a heel, I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? So thankfully, I've gotten a little bit more experience, not just in SCW Pro, but in other promotions to, be a heel and portray that character. I've surprisingly done less. Like, I'll come out and my music will be the same, but I won't give the people what they want. Like, they'll expect me to be like, hey, slap handy. No, I'll just yell. I'll make ugly faces. I also have like different hats for every occasion. I'm like a pretty avid hat collector. So whenever I'm, working heel or I'm not having a good day and I want you to know about it, I actually have an IDGAF hat. So like when I come out, I, flash the hat and you already know what's up. I'm not here for you. I'm here for me.
And I can't imagine you as a heel because you're too sweet. You're too nice. And so much. And one of the people I wanted to ask you about as well, because he's also a Black and Brave graduate. I know you've done some work with him. Ziggydykes. What's it like being around?
Yes, I'm so glad. I kind of had a feeling you were going to ask about him because I love that man. I think he's fantastic. He's one of probably the craziest but most interesting people I've ever met in my life. Like, thankfully, when I moved out here to Iowa, he was still living here in Iowa at the time, and he was still working for SCW Pro and stuff like that. So I got to know him a little bit better before he moved to California and got to do all the stuff with NWA, which I think is absolutely awesome because he's the man. Ziki's just great. Like, I'll often be the person, pick him up from the airport to, come hang out, go to IHOP, go to Waffle House. There was a time when he brought me over to the Pro Wrestling Tees store in Chicago, and we shot a promo where he was trying to do the petition thing to get on All Out for the Battle Royal. So, like, he's just a guy. Like, I just love that man to death. He's fantastic. He's never a dull moment. Like, it's just always a party, and I appreciate people because I'd like to think that, like, I'm always a party too. A little bit more in a, like, a low-key way, but, like, definitely we vibe on that same wavelength where, like, he's crazy and I'm kind of crazy, but, like, it works out.
Do you feel like you'd be a good team if ever that was to happen, you and Ziki?
Oh, absolutely. I'd be down to clown always. In fact, there's a video on YouTube because we had a match together. It was a scramble for a title here in Iowa. And there was a time when he came out of the curtain and we met, we locked eyes, we were face to face. I knew what was up. And he tried to come after me, and he did the thing with, like, his magic stick where he was throwing the ribbons out of his mouth, right?
Yeah.
And he tried to come at me with it, and I said, not today. And I went ahead and I tugged on the rope and I tripped him up, and we had ourselves a good time. So maybe he wants to get me back for that. Maybe he wants to team up. Who knows?
We spoke to Ziki last year, and we kind of got like 50% in character, 50% not in character, but it was like, you can't tell, he was just the same guy, I think. Is that what it's like wrestling then? I mean, what you see
absolutely.
is
Yes, absolutely. Because people ask me all the time. They're like, especially with guys like Ziki, they're like, is he really like that? I'm like, absolutely. He is 100% crazy all the time. And I think that's why he's so successful, honestly, because, like, that's just him. It's not a shtick. It's not something he's trying to sell to you. He's just naturally a charismatic, wild, dare I say, outlandish kind of guy. Like, that's just him. And it's great. And that's why I love him so much, because I admire people who can be authentically themselves and, like, still succeed. I think that's awesome.
Absolutely. Correct me if I'm wrong, but did you also work IWA MidSouth?
I have worked officially. I officially worked one episode of IWA MidSouth last year. Unfortunately, I don't think it was my best match because I was deathly sick. I'd like to think that it wasn't COVID, maybe, hopefully not. But I remember that match just being so sick that day. I rode up with Dave Prazak, which was awesome. He's pretty awesome himself, and I just remember thinking, like, I hope I can get through this because when you're sick, you don't feel good, you don't feel like doing anything, and then when you go out and have an athletic contest, you're like, I hope this turns out well. So, like, I definitely enjoyed my time in IWA MidSouth, and there was a time, funnily enough, while I was during training even, that Ian Rodden had me go out, and I took a Rikishi driver from Calvin Tankman. I tried to play security. I don't know why they chose me to be security of all people, because I'm only 4'10". So, but I definitely tried my best, and Calvin Tankman definitely let me know. So those are my two fond memories of IWA MidSouth. Great place, great people. Awesome. Awesome.
I always ask because Callum's the biggest IWA MidSouth fan. So whenever we know someone's worked there, I like to do it. It always makes him smile.
Yeah, it's funny because when I was speaking to Marek, I was trying to keep it together because I used to watch Marek and Tyler Black in IWA MidSouth, and this is early 2000s, and I was just trying to keep it cool, and then as soon as he mentioned IWA MidSouth, I was just marking out.
Yeah.
I always think it's cool though when people from Black and Brave get to wrestle there because it's like you're following in Tyler Black and Marek Brave's footsteps, so to speak. You're getting the same experiences they did.
Absolutely. And then I also think there's also still like that reasonable expectation. They're like, oh, you're like Tyler and Marek's kids. Well, let's see what you can do. So you're like, all right, well, here I am. I got something to live up to. Let's do this for sure.
Is it a good pressure to have then? Like you said, you're Marek and Tyler's kids. How does that affect you?
Honestly, when I had first started wrestling, it was very intimidating because I feel like maybe, and this obviously could just be me being dramatic, but I feel like at the time I put so much pressure on myself to be good during a time when I was still developing and still figuring myself out, because not only was I from this school, like a product of this school, but I was also the only female that they had at the time. So it was kind of on me not only to represent the school, but also to represent the school in terms of women's wrestling. So it was like 2 times the pressure to be like, okay, let's do it. So I think just trying to get my confidence in order and trying to figure out who I was as a person and who I wanted to portray as a character, I think that was definitely like, it was challenging, but it was a time that I think grew me to be better. So I'd like to think that now, as I sit with a little over 3 years under my belt, I have a better idea of who I am and who I like to, give off to an audience, whether it be in person, over the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking, obviously, you mentioned women's wrestling as well. Going back to the academy, did you ever get a chance to be around Becky Lynch as well? So I know she drops in sometimes with Seth. Did you ever get a chance to sort of learn from Becky?
Yeah, Becky is great. Like, obviously, she's doing her own thing now with being a mom and things like that. But before, she was always just super kind and super welcoming as well. There was a time when I was so nervous because it was my first match I had post-pandemic, or not even post-pandemic, but during the pandemic, where we didn't really have a crowd. It was our first time kind of venturing into that avenue, and I didn't really have a good gauge of how well that I had done. So nervously, very, very nervously, I approached her and I asked if she could watch it and she could give me her thoughts, and she was super gracious because obviously her time is valuable and she has lots of things to do. But the fact that she was so willing to kind of spend 5-10 minutes of her time to watch this match, sit down with me and tell me, well, maybe you could have done this, or maybe I would have done this a little bit better. But she's awesome. Like, anytime I have a chance to, even just say hello or pick her brain is an awesome opportunity for sure.
Yeah, I can't think of anyone in the business when it comes to women's wrestling who, has done more than Becky Lynch in the last 5 years. She's really broken down some walls. She's main evented pay-per-views. She's mixed it up with the guys too. And I think she's really shown, like, women can main event too, and they're just as capable as the men. So do you feel like, the knowledge that you got from Becky Lynch, is that something you're going to take with you in the future? You're going to try and follow in the footsteps of Becky Lynch as well?
I definitely think it would be against my better judgment to not heed her advice, because she's obviously been to the places that I would like to be eventually. Yeah. So definitely, like, the fact that, like I said, she was willing to sit down with me and just give me the little bits of knowledge that she had, I'm definitely going to take it. And I've applied it in all of my matches as well, and I definitely notice a difference, and I notice things start to click a little bit better, and I can understand why things are the way they are, be like, oh, well, I understand why this works the way it does now that she had let me know, because a thing that I like to say is that you don't know what you don't know. So she's just been, like, super helpful in the chances that I've gotten to chat with her and things like that. So definitely she's somebody I'd like to regard as somebody who's, like, super valuable, at least in the amount of training that I've gotten thus far.
Well, we've got to ask as well, I mean, AEW has been doing some fantastic work recently. AEW Dark has really pulled in a lot of independent talents, and I feel like they've been doing a great job of highlighting independent women wrestlers too. Is AEW and AEW Dark something you'd be looking to get a match with in the future?
Oh, absolutely. I'm all about opportunity and being ready for any opportunity at any chance. So, like I had said earlier, I'm 5 minutes from the school, so I'm there every day practicing, trying to get better, trying to hone my skills. So when that does happen, I can be there and I can show up and show the world what I'm all about, because at the end of the day, I just want to be able to inspire people. I want to show people that, you can really do anything that you set your mind to, because I didn't think that this would be something I'd be doing with my life. It was always just a dream or something that people would laugh about and be like, oh yeah, sure, you won't do that. Like, and so the fact that I am here and I am trying to make these things happen, like, I want to show people that this is a possibility. If you really want to do something, you definitely can.
Hell yeah. And obviously as well, we've been in the pandemic, and I've mentioned this to a few people we've had on, but the indies have sort of come to the forefront during the pandemic. They've almost carried the business, so to speak. And a lot of it's thrown a lot of new names out there, and a lot of them are either females, like Blair Onyx, Elena Black, yourself, Sky Blue. How important has it been for you with the indies still going?
I think it's super important because for myself, I haven't been taking as many bookings as possible, just to kind of be as a precaution, because I do live with other people who are performers, so I do try to be considerate of them in that regard. And not only that, but just the school as well, because I am still going to the school at a consistent basis. I try to keep a good note of, like, where I'm going and what I'm exposing myself to and stuff like that. So I think certain times it can be hard, because you see all these people doing great things, and while you're happy for them and you want people to succeed, it's like, oh, I want that to be me too. So yeah, the fact that just keeping those things in perspective of also being ready for the opportunity, but also keeping those things into consideration, like, it's its own, like, dilemma in its own regard, but it also just drives me to work that much harder, because if I am not really taking these bookings and getting out as much as I'd like to, well, I can use this time to train, I can use this time to be better, I can use this time to improve myself. So I think that, like, gals like Elena Black, who I've had the opportunity to share a ring with an SCW pro. I think it's so awesome that they're getting these opportunities even during a pandemic, and like I said, it just drives me to work that much harder, because if they can do it, why can't I?
Absolutely. Now, doing a bit of research as well today, I noticed one of the names that you've been in the ring with quite a few times that kept coming up was Heather Reckless.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, is that someone you're looking to get back in the ring down the line as well? Because it seems like you two have got a bit of chemistry, and there seems to be quite a few matches there.
Right?
Absolutely. I like to consider Heather Reckless probably my fight forever partner, because for the longest time, like I said, there wasn't a lot of girls in Black and Brave. So when Heather Reckless came around, this was after I think Blair Onyx had graduated as well. It was really just an instant matchup for us, because believe it or not, she's actually an inch shorter than I am. So we got to do a lot of fun stuff between me and her. So anytime we get to mix it up, it's always something that I look forward to. And she's so great. She's super athletic. So I think that in that regard, we contrast really well. So whenever we do get to wrestle, I'm like, all right, you can be the athletic one, and I will be the not athletic one. So we contrast each other really well. She's awesome, even though, I like to punch her in the face more times than not. But, it's with love.
It's with love, yeah. There's a difference.
It's fine.
Punch with love. It's all fine.
I just looked at it when I was reading it. I was like, Heather Reckless? I'm like, there's some beef here, isn't there? I mean, these two have gone toe to toe quite a few times. I'm like, we've got to see what's going on here.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't even matter, like, whether it be here or whether it be in Wisconsin or whether it even be somewhere as far as like Indiana. We always seem to find each other. So, I'm not hard to find. Anytime she wants.
Or the UK, perhaps, down the line.
Absolutely. There was a girl actually that I had a match with from the UK. She had came to America strictly to work for Shimmer, and I had gotten a chance to wrestle her at Shimmer, and she was great. Her name was Zan Phoenix. I don't know if you guys are aware of her, but she's fantastic. She's super tall, super tattooed, super jacked, and she came all the way from the UK, like I said, just to potentially work at Shimmer. So I think like the amount of hustle that must have required, I admired that greatly. So I had spent some time talking back with her about potentially, working in the UK, and then naturally the world happened. So here we are, but it's definitely still something on my list that I would love to do.
So maybe post-pandemic we could see yourself in the UK as well, because there's so many promotions here, and there's women's promotions, there's hundreds of promotions in the UK now. We never used to have this wrestling scene. Now it's thriving. So I'm sure if you did want to wrestle in the UK, there'd be more than enough places you could work here.
Yeah, and I think that's just what the exciting part about is, like, even though we're struggling and even though, we're in a pandemic, I think the opportunities are still present. And I think there's still an opportunity to, go across the pond, all things considered, and all things, regarded in terms of the way that the world is. I think that's something to be hopeful for, especially in the future. So hopefully when things start to calm down a little bit, that's definitely an avenue that I'm looking to pursue.
Yeah, and like we always tell everybody as well, when you do, you'll see me and Callum on the front row.
All right.
We'll be there.
We will be there. But
before
before
we start, or cheering, depending on which snapback you're wearing.
Yeah, you got to see what hat I'm wearing that day, all right, and then you can adjust accordingly.
Yeah.
But before we start to wrap it up as well, one final person I noticed you've been in the ring with, who I think has had a fantastic 2020, was Thunderosa. What was that like, getting to be around Thunder?
Oh my goodness, that was an incredibly intimidating time, let me tell you, because that was around the time, I think, if I'm not mistaken, because I watched that match back pretty recently as well. Oh my goodness, I had been maybe a year in, maybe not even, and they're like, hey, you're going to be in this match with Thunderosa and Zoe Lucas, who's also great from the UK.
Yeah.
And I was just, put it bluntly, I was shitting a brick. I didn't know what to think, because again, it had came from a seminar that it instituted from Shimmer's sister organization, Rise, and I'd done a seminar, and they had informed me this was the match I was going to be having, and I just, it was super scary, because I felt like I was still super new in the business. Like, I even to this day still think that I'm super new. So you can imagine how I felt at that time, where I was getting this opportunity with somebody who was so widely regarded as being like one of the best women's wrestlers in the world, with both of them. So you could say that my input was minimal. I was just kind of like keep your head down, keep your ears open kind of deal. And the fact that I just got to have that match was awesome. Like, it was definitely a learning experience, and I got to chat with her a little bit after the match to kind of, what can I work on, what can I do better. And a big takeaway from that was she just told me, be confident in yourself. Once you're being confident in yourself, like, the things will come. Like, things might be a bit of a struggle now, but it's because you need to believe in yourself as much as these other people believe in you, because I did have a lot of opportunities at that time, but it was just a matter of me also believing in myself, which I think is super important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I say I think arguably she had probably the best 2020 out of anybody. So obviously being able to learn from her must be invaluable to you.
Absolutely. And like, just looking back and reflecting on like the people that I have gotten to share a ring with, or the people I've even gotten to share like a locker room with that are out doing great, amazing things now, like, it's not only something that I'm like super humble about, but it's something like I said to encourage me to be better, that I've gotten the opportunity to be around these people. So now what can I do to be at that level? What can I do to also join these people at where they're at now? Because if I was able to, be around them and be booked in the same avenue, or at least on the same show, like, there's definitely no reason why I can't continue to be better and continue to work towards being where they are as well.
Yeah, and obviously Rosa has Mission Pro in Texas. I mean, is that somewhere you're looking to work as well?
Absolutely. Like, I've noticed, I seen that Blair got to work there against Rachel Rose here, pretty awesome. So I talk with Blair pretty frequently, and I keep up with what's happening, because she lives in Chicago, which is about 3 hours from where I am. So it's a little far, but I like to keep up with what she's doing, and I did see that she got to work down there. So hopefully that'll be in the cards for me as well, because she was doing great, and she's still doing great things. I see that she's about to wrestle Sue Young here in St. Louis in February, which is awesome. As soon as I heard, I was the first person to be like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, you're gonna do great. So just continuing to work on my own goals, but also still like be a cheerleader for my friends is something that I definitely keep in high priority.
Hell yeah. Well, before we wrap up and we let you go, tell everybody where they can find you. Social media, is there any merchandise? I'd say any upcoming shows, but there's not many at the moment, is there?
Yeah, for sure. I'm pretty easy to find on social media. I'm across the same handle on all platforms, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, even PayPal if you're feeling frisky. Wink, wink. You can reach me at S West, so Southwest Spitfire. So if you're looking for some merch, I have some pins, I have some shirts, I have pretty much anything you could be looking for. So hit me up on the DMs, and I'm happy to ship it to you, whether it be near, far, or wherever you are. There you go.
Nice. I do collect pins, so I
might
awesome. Be in touch. Yeah.
For sure.
Obviously, you're part of the Ringsiders family now, because we love you, Black and Brave guys. So we will definitely reach out, and hopefully you'll come back on.
Absolutely. Anytime you guys will have me, I'd love to join in.
Hell yeah, we will do that. We will keep in touch. Callum will let you know when this goes out, but yeah, definitely, we'd love to get you back on. But for now, Southwest Spitfire, Valentina Loca, we are Ringsiders. Thank you.
Thank you.